Neither Hicks nor Daniels are going to win any profiles in courage. These are not people who are doing this for the right reasons by any stretch of the imagination. But they are, as it turns out, the two women that can stand in the way between a democratic future for America or an autocratic future for America. And I say that because the only thing between now and November that we know about that can really flip the potential for Donald Trump presidency, that can change the polling. Right now, it's a horse race, a neck-and-neck horse race, but really Trump is winning in the swing states. The only thing that could upset that apple cart is if he's found guilty of a case, any crime really. Most voters in the independent field say if he's found guilty, they might change their vote, and they won't vote for Donald Trump, they'll vote for Joe Biden. Now, we aren't sure yet, of course, if this case will turn out in a guilty plea. It's a very complicated case. But we know it's the best shot we have. If you believe Hope or if you believe Stormy, really makes the world of a difference, because believing one of them will lead you down the path of a guilty verdict. Believing the other one will lead you down the path of a hung jury or a not guilty plea. Mind you, there's still 6 months to go, plenty of time for lots of things to change. But this is the known factor that we know, that if something changes here, if there's a guilty verdict, then guess what? It's likely to change the dynamic of the election all the way to a Biden victory. Some pollsters believe, and I tend to agree with them. So tomorrow morning, Stormy Daniels will return to the New York courthouse to continue her testimony. Now, you won't be hearing very much more about the sex between Donald J. Trump and her. In fact, you can't even find the sex in the transcript that was just released a couple of hours ago. Why is that happening? It's because there was an attempt during the hearing yesterday to contest and call for a mistrial, because the transcript that I'm about to play you some of, recreated with artificial intelligence voices, doesn't include the actual sex. I thought maybe I should just read you something from the New York Times here, which does describe the actual sex. Ms. Daniels said that the future president had invited her to dinner inside his palatial Lake Tahoe hotel suite. He answered the door wearing silk pajamas. When he was rude, she playfully spanked him with a rolled-up magazine. And when she asked about his wife, he told her not to worry, saying that they didn't even sleep in the same room, prompting Mr. Trump to shake his head in disgust and mutter bullshit to his lawyers loud enough that it drew a private rebuke from the judge, who called it contemptuous. That came out in the transcript today, and that was a bit of news that I hadn't noticed yesterday, so you should always check out the transcripts. Ms. Daniels then recounted the sex itself in graphic detail. It happened, she said, after she returned from the bathroom and found Mr. Trump in his boxer shorts and T-shirts. She tried to leave, and he blocked her path, though not, she said, in a threatening manner. The sex was brief, she said, and although she never said no, there was a power imbalance. She said that they had sex. She goes into the graphic detail of them having sex all the way through this testimony yesterday, but you will not find it in the transcript because it jump cuts between her coming out of the bathroom and whatever follows. But because it's such interesting testimony, here's just a few minutes of what transpired in court, recreated by artificial intelligence voices. So these are voices that I've just pulled off the web. These are not the actual voices, obviously, of the people involved in yesterday's hearing and in tomorrow's hearing. But I wanted you to get an opportunity to hear the testimony. It'll take you through that day in the palatial Lake Tahoe hotel suite, where Stormy Daniels and the then future president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, had what can only be described as
Now, before we broke, Miss Daniels, we were talking about the discussions you had in the hotel suite. Did there come a time that you needed to use the restroom?
Yes. I had been there for quite a while. I drank a couple of bottles of water, which is all we were drinking. It was water. And I needed to use the ladies' room. So I asked if that was possible. So I was instructed to go through the living room to the bedroom and to help myself to the facilities.
Can you describe? You said you went through a bedroom to get to the bathroom.
Yes. It was a very large, beautiful bathroom.
What did you see inside the bathroom?
So I walked through the bedroom. I did notice that the bed was unmade, but there were no personal items around, and I entered the bathroom. I went into the separate area where the toilet actually was and used the bathroom, came out and was washing my hands and touching up my lipstick. I did notice someone had obviously been using the restroom. There were towels and stuff that was open. There was a leather-looking toiletry bag on the counter with products.
What do you remember about what was inside?
I did look. I'm not proud of it. I wondered what's in here, and I noticed the toiletry was the items were old. Spice and Pert Plus. I thought that was both amusing and odd. And a manicure set, which was gold tweezers, and all gold. Things. I finished washing my hands and touched my makeup up. Then I walked out of the bathroom.
Did you try to call anybody while you were inside the...
Annalena was not answering her phone. In fact, I wish I had a cell phone camera. If I did, I definitely would have taken a picture of that. I even thought, whoa, this is crazy.
Did you try to call her while you were inside the bathroom?
I believe so. Her phone was going straight to voicemail. At this point, she wanted no part of whatever I had going on.
Happened when you left the bathroom.
When I came out of the bathroom, I expected to go around the bed and back out to where we had been sitting and talking and hopefully say, okay, time to go. I have been here for a long time. That was actually when I realized how long I had been. And when I opened the bathroom door to come out, Mr. Trump had come into the bedroom and was on the bed, basically between myself and the exit.
What was he wearing at the time?
His boxer shorts and t-shirt.
What was your reaction to seeing him like that?
At first, I was just startled, like jump scare. I wasn't expecting someone to be there, especially minus a lot of clothing. That's when I had that moment where I felt the room spin in slow motion. I felt the blood basically leave my hands and my feet, and almost like if you stand up too fast and everything kind of spin. That happened too. Then I just thought, oh my God, what did I misread to? Get here. Because the intention was pretty clear. Somebody stripped down in their underwear and posing on the bed, like waiting for you.
What happened when you came out of the bathroom? Did he stay on the bed?
When I exited, he was just up on the bed like this. And I went to step around. I laughed nervously and, tried to make a joke out of it and step around and leave. Even though I was moving like I was in a funhouse, like slow motion. I thought to myself, great. I put myself in this bad situation. Like, what did I do? How did I misread everything? He stood up between me and the door, not in a threatening manner. He didn't come at me. He didn't rush at me. He didn't put his hands on me and nothing like that. I said, I gotta go. He said, I thought we were getting somewhere. We were talking, and I thought you were serious about what you wanted. If you ever want to get out of that trailer park, basically. I was offended because I never lived in a trailer park.
Sustained. Move along.
I am sorry, Judge. I don't understand.
The objection is sustained.
You were both standing up at this time?
Yes.
And what happened next, briefly?
I just think I blacked out. I was not drugged.
What you're seeing there is, and hearing there is the edited version, the version that does not include the tawdry details of Donald J. Trump's tryst, the one-night stand maybe that he had with Stormy Daniels, because you can hear at the end there, it says the objection is sustained, and somewhere where it says that objection is sustained is exactly where those details would have been expressed. But certainly the build-up to that, the walk to the bathroom, the Old Spice, the golden utensils or whatever they are in the leather bag, the very old-looking bag with the old-looking stuff inside of it, that certainly all does sound like Donald J. Trump. I mean, even the detail which you described the room, the layout of the room, and indeed the floor of the room gives you a good indication that she was very aware of all the details. And I want you to think about how much detail she has given us in that short little bit that she's given us there. But in fact, her entire testimony is packed with details. You can't believe how many details. People were saying she was speaking too fast yesterday on the stand. That's important because it's not exactly what happened with Hope Hicks. She did not offer the sort of long-winded, endless amount of information. She was far more disciplined, you could say. And maybe that's interesting in terms of who you should believe as you head into the next few weeks of this court case. Yeah, this week was seminal, really important stuff in terms of understanding the event. Now, why do I say it matters that you believe Stormy? It doesn't really matter that you believe Stormy, whether the affair happened or not. It's not about the affair. But if she's really just a grandstander, and if they're able to prove that Michael Cohen is also just a grandstander, which we'll get to a little later on, and these people are just looking for money, power, or profile. In that case, it does matter that we believe Stormy Daniels, because really it sounds otherwise like there's a bunch of people just trying to get the president to give them money, which in this case may have worked because he did give them money, $130,000 plus. And we will do much of the same stuff that we've just done now with Hope Hicks' testimony a little later on. It's better produced, but it's also will give you a very different take on what everyone else has been saying about Hope Hicks' testimony, because there is a lot more to be said about her on the stand. She was not merely, as many people said, just supportive of the prosecution and the people there. Really important stuff happened earlier on in this third week when we learned a lot about the actual transaction, the nuts and bolts of how Michael Cohen was paid the money by Donald Trump through the Trump Organization and then through this company that Michael Cohen had set up in order to pay off Stormy Daniels. And so this is interesting information that we got, plus an incredible tape. Now, I think I'm going to play one of two tapes that Michael Cohen has led into evidence or has allowed into evidence. The first is, I call this the smoking gun. I'm not sure why it's not been given as much credence as it should.
He just had, we have a chance. He had an idea for you.
Okay. So we got served from the New York Times. I told you this regarding to unseat the divorce papers with Ivana. We're fighting it. Kasowitz is going to.
You'll never be able to get that done.
Never. Kasowitz don't ever be able. They don't have a.
Give me a code, please.
They don't have a legitimate purpose.
And you
So
have a woman that doesn't want it.
correct.
So you've been handling it.
Yes, and it's
That's
all
been going on for a while.
for about 2-3 weeks now.
All you have to do is delay it for.
Even after that, it's not going to ever be opened. There's no purpose for it. Told you about Charleston. I need to open up a company for the transfer of all of that info regarding our friend David, so that I'm going to do that right away. I've actually come up and I've spoken to Alan Weisselberg about how to set the whole thing up with funding. Yes, and it's all the stuff. All the stuff, because you never know where that company, you never know where he's going to be. Correct. So I'm all over that, and I spoke to Alan about it when it comes time for the financing, which will be.
Listen, what financing?
We'll have to pay you. So
Don't pay with cash.
no. I got no.
Did you catch that at the end there? No, I will pay cash, and well, he'd like to pay cash, and then, of course, Michael Cohen says no. That it turns out to be a very big no, because they were going to pay Stormy Daniels $130,000, right? Now that would not have flown if the IRS were ever to look at that amount as a company just suddenly disposing of $130,000 that it didn't earn any taxes on. I think the company deserves, and the country deserves its tax share. And so this is the way they sort of came around it. And this is all the evidence that we've seen so far in court, which really backs it up. It's really hard to not believe or to disbelieve that this is the scheme they put together, because the evidence is so precise. It's kind of stunning, really, when you think about it. Let me show you what they have released in court this week, which I think was pretty damning. We'll start off with this. What you're looking at here is Cohen's actual bank account, the First Republic Bank, and his statement there from the First Republic Bank. It's interesting because it has these two important notations. You see here at the bottom left, it says gross up to 360,000. I believe it says that. That's 180,000 times 2. And then it says add this 60,000 bonus, a bonus for $60,000. And then you'll get to $420,000. That is what he would actually get paid. Then on the right-hand side, you also see it says plus $50,000 paid to something called Redfinch for tech services. Now, this was something that he had paid for, our friend Michael Cohen had paid for on behalf of the Trump campaign, I guess, to basically falsify polling for the Trump campaign way back in 2016. And you remember some of those polls were really questionable at the time. They might be really questionable today too, so take them all with a grain of salt as you see what's coming out of the polling companies. But nevertheless, these two things together certainly prevent the fact that it's done on Michael Cohen's bank account. I mean, boy, and so you might be saying, well, whose writing is that? Well, the writing turns out to be Alan Weisselberg's writing and the other chief controller for the Trump Organization. So it's pretty damning that this is written by them. It explains exactly what's going on in terms of this funding. And just to explain it to you again, what it means is even though it was $130,000 that were needed to pay Stormy Daniels, That meant it needed to be a much larger amount to clear the 50% taxes that you have to pay on that stuff. $130,000. Now you need to make it into twice that, which is $260,000 in total. That means that this number would be wrong, right? Because now it's got the 180. And the reason he has that at 180 is because they've got the extra $50,000 that are being added on top of the $130,000. That gives you the $180,000. And then in order to pay that out, because both of those things were sort of illegal payments to Stormy Daniels, the other thing was an illegal payment to the Red Finch, they needed to plus up the $180,000 by multiplying that by 2, which would have given them $360,000 to gross that up. And then on top of that, you throw in $60,000 to Michael Cohen for doing all that hard work. So that is hard to dispute. And this is what this case is about. This case is about whether financial statements were fraudulently created in the interest of a crime. And in fact, here's the evidence. It's hard to refute that this is exactly what the case is. I mean, there's no ways Donald Trump is just throwing away an additional $360,000 just because. He's only doing that because it's the furtherance of a scheme, a criminal scheme. He's not the kind of guy who is going to pay any of his bills, never mind pay 3 times the amount that he needs to pay on those bills. And there's further evidence that's going on. Here is the actual check signed by Donald Trump, and these were paid in $35,000 increments. The $420,000 or whatever it was divided in of a period of time to $35,000 increments. And then you see Donald Trump's famous signature. He signs all these checks himself. And there's a bunch of these online. If any of you want to go check it out, these really happened. They really are checks signed by Trump going to Michael Cohen's company. And also on the reverse side of this, here is the invoice. This is the invoice from Michael Cohen's company back to Donald Trump, to Mr. Alan Weisselberg saying, hey, yes, indeed, I received you $35,000 for my legal services rendered this month, which is what they wrote down, I think. And finally, just one last contemporaneous note, which really helps support all this evidence, which is fantastic evidence the state has been able to put together. Here is the controller, I forget his name right now, but the controller of the Trump organization, who didn't have much to do with the deal making here, but he was writing down what it's all about, including the bonus for $60,000, $182,000 times 2 for the taxes, he says here. And then I can't, everything is slightly smaller writing for me, but it also says as per date and also explains the $35,000 per month. Hard to refute that kind of stuff, guys. When you've got the checks, you've got the invoices, you've got the 2 chief people involved in the accounting at Trump organization, all pointing to what really looks like a way to funnel illegal funds into an election. So when we say that the election in 2016 was illegally won, this is why we can say it. I mean, he has to be found guilty, presumably, but let's assume that this evidence is strong enough to find him guilty. This is how you can say that he cheated his way into that victory in 2016. It doesn't really matter that he cheated his way for Stormy Daniels. It doesn't really matter that he did it for McDougal. It matters that he did it, that he cheated, that he paid money through Michael Cohen to the National Enquirer to buy off these 2 cases and to, in that way, develop a scheme to defraud you, America, ultimately to defraud you of your vote. Because by tipping the scales of the election, by leaning into himself, by investing more money into his campaign than he was legally allowed to do, and without declaring it, he did exactly what we don't want to happen in the election, which one side is able to smother the other side so simply because of the wealth that they have. And that's what happened in 2016. Donald Trump was cheating his way to the White House in 2016. And this is the evidence that we're now seeing. It'll be interesting to see if the entire court agrees, because what happens, the evidence is clearly there. What they're now going to argue, at least the Donald Trump side, the defense side, is going to say, wait a second here. This was a scheme to defraud our guy, to extort money from Donald Trump. And the reason they're going to say that is for a number of reasons, not least of which is Stormy Daniels' lawyer, who's got a bit of a reputation in the world for doing this kind of thing, who basically, if you've got a sex tape problem, you'll negotiate your way out of that sex tape problem. This conversation between Michael Cohen and Stormy's lawyer is absolutely riveting, absolutely 100% riveting. In the last 16 minutes, I'm going to play every bit of it, because what you're getting in here is also Michael Cohen's mindset. He sounds really nervous. He sounds really terrified. You remember there was a point in time when Michael Cohen went to the New York Times and said, hey, this was just me trying to protect the president. Nobody else told me what to do. This was just me. My job is to protect the president, so I did that. And therefore, I'm the one responsible for all of this. You can't say it has anything to do with the president himself. Now, you be the judge of that when you see all this evidence we've just presented. But in the middle of all of this, you've got a very nervous Michael Cohen who You've heard me speak about Michael Cohen before, so I won't go into too much detail, but let's listen to this conversation because this is Stormy's lawyer.
So what's going on? How you been?
Everything's good. Plugging away, doing my thing.
Where are you right now?
I'm in Los Angeles.
You in New York for a day or so?
Yeah, last Thursday and Friday.
Talk to me. What's going on?
Not too much. Everything's good with me. How are you doing? You hanging in there?
I'm hanging in.
Yeah, good.
Not easy.
Yeah, I know. Hey, who's representing you with congressional stuff?
A guy by the name of Steve Ryan from McDermott, Will, and Emery.
McDermott, Will, and Emery?
Mm-hmm. Great guy, great firm.
Where is he, in D.C.?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to call him up. I just got a little bit of information for him, and then maybe you can call him.
Can you share it?
Yeah, I can. I definitely can. But it might be better going through him.
Give me an idea.
Let's see. So we had, remember the cover girl?
Right.
So that's all fine. No issues there. But there was another one, and I got a couple weird phone calls, really weird phone calls. So I just wanted to...
Have you heard anything regarding the Servos matter?
No. I don't need... which one was that?
She was the apprentice, what do you call it?
No.
Contestant?
Nope. Nothing.
And tell me why this is relevant to my guy.
All right. Well, let me say this: that I have a client, right, and you have a client, and this is a client written. We negotiated a deal.
Yep.
And so this is all covered by attorney-client communications and work product and everything else. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the thousands and thousands of transactions that have gone through my attorney-client trust account.
Correct.
Or maybe 8 weeks ago and 6 weeks ago, two separate phone calls from my bank. And this was regarding, I forget her name, Clifford. Stephanie Clifford, and my client, Stephanie Clifford, a.k.a. Stormy Daniels.
Yep.
So my bank says, so it's a very active account, right? Money comes in, money goes out every day. And this transaction happened, I don't know, 2 years ago. So my bank calls up and says, hey, we want to know what this was for.
I'll bet you it's not even your bank that's doing it.
I bet you're right.
I bet you it's somebody calling pretending to be your bank.
No, it's definitely my bank. It's just someone's prompting my bank to do it, I think. So they say, what is this for? In my 17 years of practice, they've never done that. So they say, what is this for? And I said, well, it's a confidential client matter. And that was it. And then 2 weeks later, they called back and they said, well, we understand that this is a confidential client matter, but our auditors are asking us what the matter was regarding. And I said, I cannot answer that. I said, the only thing I can say is that I'm a plaintiff's lawyer. And I left it at that, and I haven't heard anything else yet since.
Okay, so the reason why I'm asking you this question is this would not be for my lawyer.
Okay, no problem.
The person that would end up being best suited for you to speak to on this is Jay Sekulow.
Okay.
If it's even necessary.
I leave that up to you. I don't feel a need to call anybody, but if you have any insight for me, or if it's if you would like to know, I feel like I have a duty to tell you.
No.
That someone's calling up and asking.
Yeah, yep. Me is one thing.
Yep.
And I get it, and I appreciate it. The check that they're referring to, which check was that, by the way?
That was, I think it was a wire, and it was a wire from a corporation.
Was that the wire from me, or was it from the other guy?
It was either from you or from some entity. I think it might have been from you. It was not from the other guy.
Okay, so it's from me.
Yeah. And I think that the settling party was a corporation, I believe.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. but the wire may have been from you. So that's it. I just thought,
That's just so
honestly,
interesting because the amount was just not really that significant.
Correct. Yeah, it was. I can look it up, but it was 100, 120 or something.
No,
like
I
that.
think it was like 135 or something like that.
Yeah.
More importantly, how you doing, brother? I haven't spoken to you in a while.
You know,
Whatever happened with our homeless woman?
So, the guy who started the campaign, Justin Best, right? He has this pile of money, and he doesn't want to manage it. So he is contacted by this woman in Los Angeles.
Yeah. You told me that they stole the money.
Yep, they stole the money. So I ended up suing. I figured the best defense for him, Best, was a strong offense. So he went, and I filed suit on his behalf against her, the woman who stole the money, and then I named as a nominal defendant Denise Scott.
I see.
And just last week, we obtained a default judgment against the woman who stole the money. So whether she'll ever get a penny, I don't know. She may be uncollectible. And Justin Best is lucky that he hasn't gotten sued for negligently, giving the money to this woman.
I can't believe it.
It's awful.
Awful. All right, putting that aside, how are you doing? What's going on in your life?
Just plugging away, trying to practice a lot, trying to make some money and take care of my family. But it's all good. I get nothing too earth shattering. Yeah. Well, let me know if you're ever out this way, or next time I'm in New York, I'll give you a buzz.
but give me at least like a heads up, a couple of days, please. That. When you texted me, I was in DC.
Okay.
I've been prepping for this this hearing. I'm testifying live before the Senate.
I heard. I knew that.
Yeah, it's so wrong on so many levels. There's so many things that is so wrong, and I'm ready to lose my mind. The worst is every day there's some new shit that's popping up in my life.
Right.
Whether it's related to this or not, and it's killing my goddamn focus, and I don't know what to do.
Right.
I just don't know what to do.
Yeah, I know. That's why I wanted to give you a call, or come.
I wish I would have saw you.
I don't know if this is related or not, but at least I want you to know that I think those two phone calls were very weird.
Say that again?
I think those two phone calls were very weird, and I just wanted you to know.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You mind if I ask you which is your bank? I forget.
It is City National Bank.
Uh-huh.
So it's sort of like the.
Oh, I know City
Yeah.
National. Yeah. What's interesting? There's a couple of City National banks, none of which are actually, none of them are. What do you call it? Connected to one another. Like we have City National here in New York. It's not connected to your City National, which I always found interesting. Yeah.
So that's it. Doing a lot of business otherwise?
I'm trying to. Unfortunately, for me, this is not. This has not been an easy. It just hasn't been easy.
Yeah.
You're like giving me the ability to keep my my head in the game. It's very hard. Very, very, very hard.
It's just the ultimate fishbowl, and you're the ultimate target. I mean, so when you get everybody looking in, and at least 50% of the people throwing jabs,
what would you do if you were me?
I don't even know. I can't even imagine. So,
I mean, would you write a book? Would you break away from the entire Trump, we'll call it doctrine? Would you go completely rogue? Would you join with Bannon? Any thoughts? Because it's not just me that's now being affected. It's my entire family. Nobody's thinking about Michael. You understand? And despite what, like, for example, what the earlier conversation, And who else would do that for somebody? Who else?
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
Because I care about the guy.
Right.
And I wasn't going to play penny wise, pound foolish.
Right.
Right? And I'm sitting there and I'm saying to myself, what about me?
Yeah.
What about me? And I can't even tell you how many times he said to me, I hate the fact that we did it. And my comment to him was, but every person that you've spoken to told you it was the right move.
Right. It's tough for people in opposition to as lawyers, right? And he's your client. So now he controls the privilege. So even if you wanted to go write a book, you probably couldn't.
Nah, I could.
Yeah.
I could. That's not a privilege.
Right. Oh, yeah, it's tough. And you didn't ask for any of this.
No.
You just happened to be.
Well, actually, I did. I mean, look,
someone...
I did ask for it because, in all fairness, I started the whole thing. I started the whole campaign. Right. So maybe I did ask for it.
Right. Is he taking care of you or what?
No.
That sucks.
No.
That's awful.
And not only that, it's like everyone around him is, in my opinion, pulling him away from me farther and farther and farther.
Yeah.
Which I expected, by the way.
Yeah, but for as much as someone who talks about loyalty as much as he does.
Every time, but when I saw him, which was like 2 weeks ago, it was like old times, and where it was us, you know what I mean? Together.
Right.
But it's everybody else is pulling him farther. They want me so far away. It's incredible.
He's got to be miserable too.
You know what? He's not. He's really not. I mean, not only is he not miserable about it, he's actually enjoying, which is hard to believe. Really hard to believe.
Yeah.
But I'm really so angry right now. It's like I'm trying to vent, and I can't believe some of the bullshit that's going on. When are you due back in New York?
No, I don't have any plans to be there anytime soon. When I get a call, it's like, boom, I have to go, and that's it. But I would imagine it's probably once a month.
Well, please let me know a couple of days in advance.
I will, Michael.
And anything that I can do to help you, I'm always here, because you've always been great, to me and to the boss. So.
Well, I appreciate that.
And I really mean it. Let me know.
Yeah.
Anything. So.
I appreciate it. All right, Michael. That's all I got for you.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, take care.
Okay,
bye.
Bye now.
It's a very lonely and frightened sounding Michael Cohen talking to the lawyer for Stormy Daniels after that lawyer received a call from his bank that a certain transaction involving Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen had been flagged. Now, the people who do that kind of flagging tend to be the Treasury Department or the Chicago unit that handles financial crimes, and they would have said, hey, this looks a little suspicious. And you can tell the fear on Michael Cohen's voice there, and Michael Cohen's tone of voice there. And you can certainly tell that he's alone. He has been left out on his own, trying to carry this and being the proverbial scapegoat. And especially in the New York Times mentioned that he was the guy who came up with this whole thing by himself. And of course, we've learned subsequently that it was not that he's not the guy who is so altruistic that he was just out there on his own protecting the former presidents of the United States, that there was a plan in place between him and his boss, as he calls him, the boss, Donald J. Trump, and David Pecker, the CEO and chairman of the company that owns the National Enquirer, the AMI. And they put together a deal to make sure that no dirty stories about Donald Trump hit the presses anywhere in America by catching and killing these stories, which they did on 3 occasions, as the court is finding out. On these 2 famous occasions involving 2 women, but on another occasion where there was a butler in one of his buildings who had said that Donald Trump had a baby with one of the maids in the building, and that was going to be exposed. Now, of course, that one, they say, turned out to be a lie. We don't know if it was really a lie or not, but they claim that one was a lie, but they still brought up the story to catch and kill it. The other two stories we know happened. There was an affair with Stormy, and there was another affair with McDougal that absolutely lasted a long period of time. In fact, Stormy Daniels on the court stand yesterday revealed that she and McDougal actually were introduced to each other by Donald Trump at one point, which must have been an incredible thing. And so you might be asking, where's Melania in all of this? In fact, where is Melania in all of this? She's not been in court once during this court case, which is now stretched into its third week. We'll answer that question in a little bit. She's certainly part of the game plan for the court case, and we'll explain that in a second. But let's stick with Michael Cohen just for a little bit here, because there is an incredible body of evidence now building around his involvement. You've certainly seen the documents we just showed you before we played that tape. There's this tape itself. There's the tape before that we just played, which showed him in conversation with Donald J. Trump about how they were going to fund this company that was going to pay off Stormy Daniels. Michael Cohen's feeling in this tape that he's being sidelined by everyone inside Donald Trump, that they're pushing him further and farther, as he says it, but further and further away from the center of power, the center of gravity in the Trump organization, Donald Trump. And in fact, that does turn out to bear fruit, because that is in fact what happens is what is verified by Hope Hicks in her testimony. So there's two pieces here about Hope Hicks's testimony, because I'm going to play as we end the show tonight, because most people walked away from that testimony saying, wow, she was a great witness for the people, for the prosecution. Absolutely slam dunk great witness for the prosecution. She may have been. She certainly affirmed a couple of things that were kind of hard to deny. I mean, we sort of know there was a Stormy Access Hollywood tape. We know that existed. Why? How could she deny that happened and there wasn't a reaction to it? Of course, she was able to provide some additional color as to how they reacted, but we know that. We know how they reacted. So you can't deny that. She was also able to add some additional information about what happened when they first received information that the actual payment from Michael Cohen to Stormy Daniels was revealed as well by the Wall Street Journal. She was able to paint that in, but we know that as well. But she also did two other things on the stand yesterday, which made me really question the so far good graces and good reputation of Hope Hicks, because she claimed in her testimony two things that I have not heard anyone claim. One of them is that this Michael Cohen defense, that he's the guy who automatically just paid for everything, that it didn't have to go through anybody else, and he just took the onus on himself to just pay the bills and then negotiated with Alan Weiselberg and everybody to get this additional plus up of $360,000 in grossing up of the taxes, that this was all his idea and that Donald Trump had said it was his idea and therefore had nothing to do with him, A. Secondly, he's the second line that he's not a very likable guy. Probably not, but also that he's also a bit of a wild card, a bit of a rogue that will be trying to make him the scapegoat ultimately for everything that this Trump organization has done in order to steal the votes, to steal the 2016 elections, which she was a part of. Hope Hicks was a part of. And she was also a part of the cover-up. The first thing she said is deny after the Access Hollywood tapes came out, because that is just what people in her position do, but it's also a culture that Donald Trump had developed in his organization. I'm going to play you two transcripted reenactments by artificial intelligence voices that are just generated voices from the internet, not the actual voices of the people in the court. Let's listen to this clip. This is Hope Hicks' testimony from last week, and this is about this very issue of who's responsible. Who is ultimately responsible for this payoff? And Michael Cohen had said this to the New York Times, that he's the guy who did it all by himself. Here's what Hope Hicks had to say about that.
I believe it was. The morning after Michael had given a statement to the New York Times, saying that he had, in fact, made this payment without Mr. Trump's knowledge, President Trump was saying he spoke to Michael, and that Michael had paid this woman to protect him from a false allegation, and that Michael felt like it was his job to protect him. And that's what he was doing. And he did it out of the kindness of his own heart. He never told anybody about it. And he was continuing to try to protect him up until the point where he felt he had to state what was true.
And this is what President Trump told you Michael Cohen said to him.
That's right.
How long had you known Michael Cohen by that point?
3.5 years.
And did the idea that Mr. Cohen would have made a $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels out of the kindness of his heart, was that consistent with your interactions with him up to that point?
Objection.
Overruled.
I would say that would be out of character for Michael.
Why would it be out of character for Michael?
Overruled.
I didn't know Michael to be an especially charitable person or selfless person. He's the kind of person who seeks credit.
Did Mr. Trump say anything else about this issue when he told you that Michael made the payment?
Just that he thought it was a generous thing to do, and he was appreciative of the loyalty. That's all I remember.
Colangelo also asked if she recalled Trump sharing his views on the timing of the story's publication.
Hicks, he wanted to know how it was playing, and just my thoughts and opinion about this story versus having the story a different kind of story before the campaign had Michael not made that payment. And I think Mr. Trump's opinion was it was better to be dealing with it now, and that it would have been bad to have that story come out before the election.
That's a critical piece of evidence that Hope Hicks gives there. Firstly, she's obviously suggesting that, Michael Cohen was just doing this as a rogue person. He was just out there on his own doing it himself. That's what the president told her. The president didn't seem to know any better. But then comes this admission, hey, we did actually do it, because although it could be argued at the time, Michael was the only one who knew about it. Michael Cohen was the only one who knew about it. But they confess this is in the White House. This is after the fact. They've learned that the payments to Stormy Daniels have been revealed, that it does come from Michael Cohen. This is now the follow-up scandal on what would have been the main scandal. The original scandal would have had Access Hollywood happen, the Access Hollywood tapes happen, directly followed by the Stormy Daniels interview revealing that she had this night affair with Donald J. Trump, and that she confessed to this very salacious thing just before the elections and right after he said, grab them by the pussy. But instead, they dealt with it a few months later when it came out. And that's what that's what Hope Hicks is saying there at the end there, that her boss, Donald Trump, the president of the United States, was very thankful for the idea that Michael Cohen had paid this fee to Hope Hicks, whether he did it on his instructions or not, that it saved them a major hit in the final days of the election campaign in 2016. Still admitting it happened. Maybe he's not confessing it was his doing, but certainly saying it was better that it happened the way it did, that the payment happened, than if it hadn't happened and they were dealing with that crisis before the elections. All right, I have one more tape of Hope Hicks to play you. It's along the same kind of lines. Hicks' testimony has been ultimately portrayed by many people as being about her supporting the prosecution, about the people's case, saying basically that what Hope Hicks experienced supports these ideas that there was a conspiracy to commit these false bank statements. But you really listen to the testimony, you really read the way it was happening. She does two things. She's able to point a finger at Michael Cohen and say he's the guy, and he's not really trustworthy. He's dirty. He's not really one that we would like to have around very much, certainly on the campaign. And the second thing she does is she was able to color in how much concern there was for Donald J. Trump to have for Melania, that his big concern at the time wasn't the election campaign, but really was all about Melania. How would she react to the fact that he just had these affairs, that there was this payoff? Truthfully, she's the only person who, in her mind, believes that's the case. There's no other evidence, except because she knew Donald J. Trump so well, she assumed, she says on the stand, that this is why the Melania defense is valid. And basically, that defense takes this whole payment scheme out of an election as an election crime and puts it somewhere else. So perfectly fine to pay $130,000 to Stormy Daniels if it's not about the election. Then you go ahead, spend your money paying off whoever you want to. If it's about an election, it becomes a very serious crime. It becomes a felony, and that's what they're going to be stuck on, I believe, when we finally get to the final stages of this incredibly interesting court case that's happening.
Miss Hicks, I want to start by talking a little bit about your time at the Trump Organization, if that's okay. I think you said you started around October of 2014.
Yes.
And your initial title was the Director of Communications.
Yes.
And that was a position that the Trump Organization created to bring you in, right?
Yes.
And I think you said this morning that you focused on real estate, hospitality, and entertainment. That was your portfolio there.
Yes. Sorry. Could I just have a minute?
Of course. Judge, maybe we could take a break? Hicks, do you need a break?
Please.
Sure. Let's take a few minutes.
We were talking about the Trump Organization, and I think you said this morning that it ran a little bit like a family business while you were there.
Yes.
You met the family, correct?
Yes.
President Trump's children, right?
Yes.
His wife?
Yes. And
you were interacting with President Trump regularly. Early on in your time at the Trump Organization, correct?
Yes.
And you felt that you had his trust and respect.
Yes.
You met some of his staff, right?
Yes.
including Rona Graff you mentioned.
Yes,
And I think you said this morning that your perception of that relationship was one of mutual respect between President Trump and Miss Graff.
absolutely.
She had a pretty big job there too, right?
Yes, I really looked up to Rona.
And I think you said this morning she was crucial.
She was, yes,
You mentioned interacting with Mr. Cohen?
yes,
And tell me if I am wrong. It sounded like those interactions were pretty minimal.
yes,
I think you mentioned a little bit of assistance with the licensing aspects of the hotel deal.
I think that was my only experience working with him unrelated to his interest in the political operation.
And let's talk a little bit about the campaign.
Okay,
Your title was press secretary, right?
yes,
And it sounded like your duties and responsibilities morphed onto the new job in a way that sort of carried on what you were doing for President Trump at Trump.org.
a little bit, just in different context, not only real estate and hotels.
More politics, less hotels.
Yes,
And let's focus on the period 2015 to 2016 for a little bit. Mr. Cohen wasn't part of the campaign, right?
no, he would try to insert himself at certain times, but wasn't supposed to be on the campaign in any official capacity. There were some things he did in a voluntary capacity. I think he put together a diversity coalition at one point.
The campaign had separate counsel, separate lawyers,
Yes,
and you mentioned that Mr. Cohen made some of the statements and did some TV appearances during the campaign.
yes,
And am I correct that he was instructed to focus on President Trump's business credentials, right?
yes,
And even in connection with that authorization, he was speaking as campaign surrogate, not part of the campaign, correct?
that's right. He was speaking as an employee of the Trump organization that had experience working with Mr. Trump. In 2015 and 2016, that's where he still worked. Yes,
And there were times when he did things that, in a sense, that were frustrating to the campaign staff.
yes,
Things that were unauthorized by the campaign, right?
yes,
He went rogue at times, fair to say?
yes,
There were times when Mr. Cohen did things that you felt were not helpful to what you were trying to accomplish.
yes. I used to say that he liked to call himself Fixer or Mr. Fix-It, and it was only because he first broke it that he was able to come and fix it. And he was really just a lawyer, right?
I want to talk a little bit about when that Access Hollywood tape came out. I think you said that you first got wind of it on sort of Friday night when you were at Trump Tower during the debate prep.
It was Friday afternoon, 1:30.
Thank you. And people were there getting ready for the debate that weekend, and the president was there for the debate prep. And so there was an in-person meeting to discuss how to react to this news article. And that Friday night into the Saturday morning, people worked pretty late, right?
Yes. And
I think we looked at President Trump's statement that ended up being October 8th. It was after midnight on 3 October 8th.
yes, that's right.
You had sense, didn't you, that this was causing him personal stress, right?
Yes, yes,
He was worried about how this would be viewed at home.
yes.
What about your observations of that relationship caused you to think that night this was causing him stress about what would happen at home?
President Trump really values Mrs. Trump's opinion, and she doesn't weigh in all the time, but when she does, it's really meaningful to him. And he really respects what she has to say. So I think he was just concerned about what her perception of this would be. And yeah, I know that was weighing on him.
You talked about when the November 4, 2016 article came out, that President Trump asked that the newspapers not be brought to the residence that day.
Yes,
And that was another indication, wasn't it, that this was hitting home in a very real way.
Those two clips are really fascinating, aren't they? You're getting to hear from Hope Hicks, firstly backing the Melania defense, the idea that Donald J. Trump was so concerned about the disclosure of his affairs and the payments of the affairs that he would absolutely be worried about Melania finding out and about her concerns around this, and also about keeping the newspapers from being delivered to her home, to their home. I mean, whatever. Don't buy it. Melania is barely present in Donald J. Trump's life. She's barely present even during this enormous court case. She's not even shown up once to show her support for Donald J. Trump. And in fact, if she did, I wouldn't be surprised if she did it by contract. She's $150,000 per appearance kind of thing now these days. She's really just fitting a role for Donald Trump. And I don't think they're considered together anymore. But who knows? I'll leave that up to the other more gossipy channels to talk about. But Nevertheless, this Melania defense doesn't strike me as being very true or interesting because nothing about any of this came out as being about Melania. The payments were about the campaign. The deal with Pecker was about the campaign. Everything was about getting the money to them by the time the campaign happens. Nothing to do with Melania. But it is interesting that Hope Hicks, under a lot of stress there, started crying on the stand. Now, unclear why she started crying. She'd just been talking about her years with the Trump family. It makes me wonder whether she was under so much stress because she's being put out there to carry some of these impossible to believe defenses. One of them is the defense of Melania, saying that the Melania defense is legitimate in any way. The second one appears to me to be that Michael Cohen is such a volatile, rogue figure. He's such an outcast that he is likely just to have done this on his own because he was so angry that he had not been sent to Washington. In fact, he was a real loyalist to Donald Trump. We know that. And that's why he did all the crazy things he did for Donald Trump. But he did it with Donald Trump's knowledge. This was not the kind of thing he did on his own. He was, whatever you say about his past, it's not like it was clean. He did a lot of crazy things. The only clean thing he's done, maybe, is bring these claims forward to the courts so they could, to the prosecutors and the DA, so they were able to do this cold case. But there's a lot of questions around Michael Cohen, and that's why he's a very questionable witness here. He's going to be very fundamentally important. Whether people walk away believing him by the end of this case or whether they walk away disbelieving him is going to matter a lot. I'm going to say that we believe him because the evidence is there to back him up. We showed you the documents earlier. We've played you the tapes. He certainly was involved in an effort to pay off Stormy Daniels to the tune of $130,000 and then falsifying all sorts of documents in order to make that happen. So those are the two things you've learned tonight. The other thing you've learned tonight is regarding Stormy Daniels and the fact that we're not going to have much of the salacious sex details in the final transcript. Perfectly okay with me. But it is interesting that the affair and the way she describes the affair is full of enormous amounts of detail. And when you see that kind of detail in someone who's telling a story, you're more likely to believe it because it's so full of details. Now, the defense is going to say the next few days, she's a liar, she's not telling you the truth, whatever. I don't think that's the case. I think when you look at her comments today versus her comments many years ago, they've evolved a little bit, but the facts remain the facts. She hasn't changed those facts at all. As to what may be coming in the next few days, there'll be more Stormy Daniels tomorrow. That's going to be fascinating. It's a rough cross-examination as the defense really puts it to her that she's making this up, that she's a bit of a gold digger, she's an opportunist. They're going to do the same about Michael Cohen. When he hits the stand, boy, there'll be many questions to be asked. But I will say one thing. After yesterday's testimony and tomorrow's testimony, this case is going to become even more and more interesting to the public. Right now, only 50% are sort of keeping track of this polling, of this court case. More and more people are going to start watching it. That's a good thing and a bad thing, because if this, in fact, ends in a hung jury, which it very well may, because all you need is one person to disbelieve that Donald Trump did this, and just that believe that, say, Michael Cohen did it on his own, or Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels did it on their own. All you need to do is just present a little bit of doubt for one juror, and the whole thing becomes a hung jury. It does not mean it didn't happen. It just means that he might get off. And if he gets off, what does that do to the polls? Do people who are hesitant about Donald Trump then go back in and back him because, hey, this was a witch hunt? If, on the other hand, he's found guilty, which is a possibility as well, then what? Do all those people who are on the sidelines flip to Biden because they can't imagine what it's like to have a president of the United States who's going to be in court and also in prison at the same time? Those two are very big questions that are on everyone's mind, and why this court case is super important to America's future. Yet we shouldn't forget what it's really about. This might seem like it's about Stormy and hope, but it really is about the maintenance of democracy and the vision that the founding fathers of America had envisioned for this country, one where there would be equality, freedom, liberty for all, which, has not happened, admittedly, for all Americans, and it hasn't even happened for some Americans. But it's the best system we have in the entire world. There is nothing better than the American system of democracy when you look at the amount of progress that it's achieved, the amount of incredible wealth it's developed, and also just the general freedom is something you feel when you walk into. I've lived in countries where there's been no freedom. I've lived in countries where there is freedom. And boy, do you feel the difference when you walk out on the streets in New York City versus walk out in the streets of Johannesburg or in the middle of apartheid. When there is a police state, when there is an enormous police presence, when the government is telling you everything you can do, think, eat, talk, and sleep with, when that happens, the world feels full of fear. The world becomes suspicious. The world becomes not a place of creative development. It becomes a place of creative destruction. And the difference is vast. And as we look today across the world, the powers that are opposing freedom and democracy, the powers from China to Russia to Hungary to various other places on this planet, we are looking still further and further into the abyss here that American democracy could be reaching an end this November, which is why you have to get out there, you have to vote, and you have to educate as many people as you can as to why this election is so important. It isn't about Stormy and hope, but it is about whether we have hope for the future of America and the future of democracy. And there's only one candidate that can deliver that in this election cycle in terms of the presidency, and that is Joe Biden, who is continuing to do a remarkable job on the world stage and also domestically. That is the show for tonight. I'm so sorry we were late. I'm so sorry I keep being a bit longer than I intend to on these shows, but there's so much good information to share. There is, in fact, a lot more that I didn't get to tonight, and I'll do that next time because this is a much bigger scandal, a much bigger scheme than anyone has told you before. So we'll review that on the next episode of Narativ. And one final thing here, as I've been pointing out to many of my very many loyal followers, and there are about 400 of you that pay a certain amount of money in the $5 or less range for Narativ to operate every month. That is not actually enough money for any human being in my world to fully survive and still have all these expenses that one has for starting a startup like this, which involves a lot of technology and equipment and time. And so I've run out of money. And this is not me just saying, hey, I need money. This is because I want to fool you or steal money from you, or I'm not a grifter in any form. I just would like you to consider supporting Narativ and my work, especially for the next 6 months. The work we've done leading up to now has been really game-changing for the world. A lot of the stories that we now take for granted about what we know about the attack on democracy and the enemies of democracy is because of the work that I did here on Narativ and exposing everything from coronavirus to the early days of the Russian influence over the Trump campaign. And even this year, we've done so much that has been so pivotal in terms of exposing Michael Johnson's affiliations to various Russian figures who might be influencing him and that may have affected the Ukraine aid. We've exposed the Russian origin story of the impeachment effort to impeach Joe Biden using the Hunter Biden laptop, which was Russian intelligence operations. We've been on form, and I believe very helpful to many people in terms of understanding exactly the importance of this particular trial that's happening and the significance of these different parties and what their testimony means. And in terms of Israel and our coverage of Israel and the October 7th attacks and the attack on Gaza, I think we've been probably foundational in explaining to Americans exactly the role that Benjamin Netanyahu has played all the way from 2016 onwards in this anti-democratic movement that he seems to be a part of and that now he tends to take over Gaza. These are all significant stories that have changed the narrative, to use an expression, but I can't do this on fumes alone. I need your support. I want to keep as much of this programming free because you deserve it. You deserve the truth. There's nothing more important in a democracy than the truth. And that's our mission here at Narativ. And it's why we're appealing to you. I'm appealing to you today to sign up for Narativ. You can do that at any of these places on the bottom of the screen at patreon.com/Narativ. Multiple tiers there. I suggest the $10 tier a month. If you can do that between now and the election, hey, that's just $60 for securing an independent voice to cover the elections until November. Then there's the Substack, which has currently got a special deal on 20% off. So that Substack is narativ.substack.com, Narativ, Narativ.substack.com. And on YouTube, you can also subscribe at youtube.com/Narativ. If you're watching on YouTube right now, it's the join button underneath the screen here. There is a much less expensive tier, the $2.99 tier there. But really, we hope you are able to fund us at the higher tiers. It takes a lot of work every second of my life, basically, to put together this content to make sure that it's factually correct, that we investigate everything accurately, and that we provide a very unique, forward-leaning perspective on what is happening around the world that's helped you and America stay ahead on the fight against democracy and to defeat the enemies of democracy. And I'm not in any hurry to give up. I'm just hoping that my voice is heard and my plea to you is heard, and that we can get as many people watching this right now to sign up. I'd recommend the Narativ Substack, narativ.substack.com. It's a great page. You get a lot of information. I update it regularly, the stuff you don't get to see on the podcast, and it'll help us continue to do the work that I've been doing here on Narativ for, 8 years. Can you believe it's 8 years? Thank you very much for being on the show tonight, or being here with me tonight. I have so much more to report on Michael Cohen and also about the Donald Trump hush money case, and I'll continue to do that on future episodes of Narativ. So we'll see you next time. And thank you for being here. This is Zev Shalev signing off.
One day, you'll tell the story of autocrats, crooks, and kings who came for our freedom. A story of citizens who stood up to tyranny and won. The people prevailed and renewed an old vow to a more perfect union. And that was just the beginning. The story continues. Narativ, where truth lives.